I caught Jessica lying before. Small things. A dinner she said she had with the girls that turned out to be cancelled. A weekend trip to her sister's that her sister didn't even know about. But every time I asked, she smiled that fake sweet smile, made some joke, kissed me too hard, and somehow I ended up being the one apologizing. I let it slide because deep down I didn't want to face what it could mean. I didn't catch her because I was clever. I caught her because she got lazy. It started 2 months ago when Jessica suddenly decided she needed to be at the office early 3 times a week. Not just early. Like 5 a.m. early. She claimed she was working on a special project for a promotion. She left home in her black pencil skirt and silk blouse, perfectly styled, and returned late, exhausted, snapping at me for stupid things like leaving my shoes near the door or not wiping down the counters properly. If I asked anything, she would sigh like I was some idiot child bothering her while she solved quantum physics. One night, after she passed out from exhaustion, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't even trying to look, but the message flashed bright enough to catch. Can't wait for tomorrow. You wearin' that skirt again? I can still taste you. It was from a contact saved under Amanda. I stared at it for a solid minute, feeling something inside me quietly, methodically come apart. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't even wake her up. Instead, I started planning. For a week, I played dumb. I kissed her good morning. I made her coffee. I asked about her promotion progress. She lied to my face like it was breathing to her. No hesitation, no guilt, just smooth polished lies sliding right off her tongue. I watched her get dressed every morning, pretending not to notice the fresh lingerie tucked into her work bag. I needed proof. Not for a court, not even for anyone else. For myself. Because part of me still clung to the idea that maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was some explanation I couldn't see. That's when the package showed up. It was a Thursday. I was home when Jessica called me, her voice strained but trying to sound casual. She said she'd accidentally ordered something to the house instead of the office and could I please not open it. She laughed too high, too fast. I agreed. Of course, babe. No problem. The box sat there on the kitchen table for 3 hours. I didn't touch it. I just looked at it. Like it was a living thing breathing on the wood. At some point, I realized my hands were trembling and I wasn't even aware of it. When I finally opened it, it wasn't some office supplies or whatever stupid excuse she would have made up. It was a men's leather bracelet engraved on the inside with, "To my wild one. Always hungry for more." She had no idea I found out. But when the package arrived at her office, her perfect little world fell apart. I didn't call her. I didn't scream into the phone. Instead, I did something I knew would make her unravel faster than anything else. I played along. I texted her while she was at work. "Hey babe, a package came for you. I didn't open it, don't worry. I'll drop it by your office after lunch." Her reply came back almost instantly. No. It's okay babe, just leave it, I'll get it later. Love you. 3 exclamation points. Panic dripping from every pixel. I told her no problem, I was already on my way. I packed the bracelet back up perfectly, slid the box into a gift bag, and drove to her office, every mile feeling like a fuse burning shorter and shorter. When I walked into the lobby with that gift bag in hand, I saw her through the glass wall of her office. She was there, laughing too loudly with a man who looked like he belonged on a yacht catalog cover. Tall, tan, cocky. His hand brushed her lower back as he leaned over her desk. They didn't see me yet. I stood there for a full minute just watching. Letting it sink in. Letting the anger settle not into an explosion but into something colder. Cleaner. I walked straight in, ignoring the secretary calling after me, and dropped the bag right on Jessica's desk. She spun around so fast her chair slammed against the wall. Her face went white. Not just pale. White. Like every blood vessel decided to shut down at once. "Hey babe," I said, voice calm. "Brought your package." The man straightened up, sensing the shift but clearly unsure of the rules. Jessica just stared at me like a cornered animal. I looked her dead in the eyes. Then at him. Then back at her. "You gonna open it?" I asked. She stammered something, some noise that was meant to be a word but wasn't. The guy glanced at the bag, back at her, then back at me. "Maybe you should come back later, man," he said, doing that fake calm voice that guys use when they think they're about to be punched. I smiled at him. Not a real smile. Not even close. "Nah," I said. "I think now's good." Jessica's hands shook as she pulled the box from the bag. She opened it. Read the engraving. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. The guy leaned over and read it too. His face shifted. Confused. Then something sharper. Jessica finally found her voice. "Ryan, please. Just. It's not what you think. I swear it's not. I laughed once. Hard. Loud. The kind of laugh that doesn't sound like laughing at all. You really think I'm that stupid, Jess? Her mouth worked, but no real words came. The man, sensing he'd been caught in something messy, stepped back like he didn't know her, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely, totally clear. Jessica kept babbling. Grabbing at my arm like that would somehow pull everything back to normal, but I didn't even flinch. I just stared at her, feeling the weight of every single lie she told me pressed down until it almost felt hilarious. This woman, who had spent months spinning her little fantasy life, now stood in front of me crumbling faster than she could lie her way out of it. The man. Later I'd find out his name was Brandon, because of course it was. Shook his head in disgust and walked out without a word. Didn't even look at her. Left her standing there, humiliated, in front of a half-empty office full of people pretending not to watch. Phones were already out. I caught a glimpse of a secretary recording the whole thing, and for one savage second, I hoped it went viral. Jessica tried to gather herself, wiping at her face like she could erase the panic. She said my name again, softer this time, like maybe if she just said it right, I'd forget everything. Ryan, please, let's just go somewhere and talk. Please, please don't do this here. She was pleading now, but not out of guilt, out of fear. Fear of being seen, fear of losing her little curated life, fear of being exposed for exactly what she was. I leaned in close, close enough she could smell the finality coming off me like smoke. Talk, I said, voice low. You've been talking, Jessica. You talked to Brandon. You talked to Amanda. You just forgot to talk to me. Her eyes widened. She realized then that I knew more than just the bracelet. She realized she wasn't dealing with the version of me she used to run circles around. I straightened up and turned to leave. She grabbed my wrist again, harder this time. Ryan, I made a mistake. Okay? It didn't mean anything. It's over. It's been over. It was a stupid phase. I was stressed. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I yanked my hand back like her touch burned. You're right, I said, loud enough for the watching office to hear. I don't understand. I guess I'm just too loyal, too stupid, too boring to cheat when things get tough. There was a collective exhale from the room, the kind of silence that only happens when everyone is desperate not to move, not to interrupt, as if breaking the spell would make it worse. Jessica's face crumpled into a twisted, ugly mask. She didn't look sorry. She looked exposed, cornered. You think you're perfect? She hissed under her breath, voice shaking with rage. You think you're some saint? You think you didn't drive me to this with your boring little life and your boring routines? You're a nobody, Ryan. You always were. There it was. The truth she had been choking on for years, spilling out like poison. It wasn't even about Brandon or whoever else there might have been. It was about her. Jessica wasn't sorry she cheated. She was sorry she got caught. I stood there, letting her words hang in the air. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I simply said, thanks for finally telling the truth, and walked out of that building without looking back. I could hear her yelling after me, but I didn't turn around. Not once. When I got to my car, I sat there for a moment, staring at the steering wheel, the city spinning slightly outside the windshield. I thought maybe I would cry. I thought maybe the anger would finally catch up and drown me. Instead, I started laughing. Not a happy laugh. A raw, broken sound. Because for the first time in months, I saw things exactly as they were. Jessica had never loved me the way I loved her. She loved the idea of me, steady, safe, predictable. Until she didn't. Until she found something newer, shinier, more exciting. And now that illusion was shattered. I wasn't broken. She was. And I was just getting started. I didn't drive home right away. I just sat in the parking garage, engine off, the heat slowly suffocating the car while I stared at nothing. I didn't need to go home yet. I wasn't afraid of facing her there. I just wanted to give her time. Time to stew, to panic, to make mistakes. When I finally pulled into the driveway hours later, her car was there, parked crooked like she had skidded into the spot and sprinted inside. Every light in the house was on. I took my time getting out, locking the car carefully, walking up the steps slow. I wanted her to feel every second of it. The door wasn't locked. I pushed it open, and the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not real silence, the kind that hums with electricity, vibrating with the tension of 100 things unsaid. The second thing I noticed was the suitcase. It was sitting in the hallway, half-zipped, like she had tried to pack in a panic and then given up halfway through. A tangle of clothes spilled out, designer dresses, shoes still with tags on them, makeup bags half open. None of the things that mattered. None of the real things that people take when they're leaving someone they love. I stepped over it and walked into the living room. Jessica was there, sitting stiffly on the couch, hands clasped so tightly in her lap they looked bloodless. She had changed into one of those cozy good wife outfits, a big sweater, leggings, like throwing on the uniform of our old life would erase what had happened. It was pathetic. She jumped up when she saw me, taking a shaky breath like she had been rehearsing this moment. "Ryan, listen," she started, voice trembling. "I know you're angry. I know I made mistakes, but please, can we just talk? Really talk? I can explain." I cut her off with one word. "Sit." She flinched but sat back down. I stayed standing, arms crossed, staring at her like she was a stranger who had wandered into my home. "Explain," I said. Not a question. A command. She launched into a story so rehearsed it made me nauseous. Stress at work. Feeling unappreciated. Feeling lonely. She tried to twist it, make it about us, about how I wasn't emotionally available, how I didn't see her anymore. She cried at the right moments, voice cracking like she had practiced in a mirror. It was almost impressive, really. If you ignored the part where it was complete and utter garbage. I let her talk until she ran out of breath, ran out of lies, ran out of rehearsed performances. Until she sat there, sagging, mascara running, waiting for me to break. Waiting for me to comfort her, to tell her we could fix it. Instead, I walked to the coffee table where her phone was lying, screen cracked slightly at the edge. I tapped it awake. No password. She was too rattled to think straight. The first thing that popped up was a string of messages. Not just from Brandon. From 3 different names I didn't recognize. Different conversations. Different timestamps. She hadn't just made one mistake. Jessica had made a lifestyle out of betrayal. I turned the phone toward her. Let her see it. Watch her face collapse in on itself. "You were lonely," I said, voice dead flat. "You were greedy." She opened her mouth. Closed it. There was nothing left to say. I dropped the phone onto the table, the clatter sounding louder than it should have. "You're not sorry you cheated," I continued. "You're sorry you can't keep cheating. That's the difference." Her eyes flooded again, real tears this time, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. I had loved a woman who didn't exist. The real Jessica had been a ghost in my house for months, maybe longer. "You said you wanted to talk," I said, stepping back toward the door. "Here's my side of it." I pulled my keys from my pocket. Tossed the house key onto the floor between us. "You have until tomorrow afternoon to be gone. I don't want to see your face again." She gasped, stumbling to her feet. "Ryan, please. Don't do this. Please, we can go to counseling, we can fix this." I smiled. Not kindly. There's nothing left to fix. And I left her standing there, sobbing in the wreckage she had created, in the ruins of the life she had set on fire just because she wanted to feel wanted. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. I closed it carefully, the click of the latch sealing the end of everything we had pretended to be. I didn't go far that night. Just drove around the city with no real destination, windows down, letting the cold air rip through the car and scrape everything out of me. I wasn't thinking about Jessica anymore. I wasn't thinking about anything. I just needed to move, to keep moving, because if I stopped I was afraid I might actually feel the full weight of it all crash down. Around midnight, I parked at a cheap motel 2 towns over. Not because I needed a place to stay, I had friends, I had options, but because I wanted to be somewhere anonymous. Somewhere I could be nobody for a while. I checked in, ignored the pitying look from the night clerk, and collapsed onto the lumpy bed fully dressed. I must have dozed off because my phone vibrating on the nightstand jolted me awake. It was almost 3 a.m. I didn't recognize the number, but something in my gut told me to pick up. "Ryan," a woman's voice said. Hesitant. Shaky. "Yeah," I said, sitting up. "Who's this?" She hesitated. "My name's Lindsay," she said. "You don't know me. But I know Jessica. Or at least I thought I did." Every muscle in my body tensed at once. Lindsay explained in a rush that she was Brandon's girlfriend, ex-girlfriend now. She had found Brandon's phone buzzing nonstop after he passed out drunk that night, texts coming in from Jessica under the fake name Amanda. She read them. She saw everything. And she wanted me to know something else. Jessica wasn't just cheating for the thrill. She wasn't just stringing me along while chasing attention. She was planning to leave me. She and Brandon had been talking for months about how she could clean me out in the divorce. How she could start fresh with him once she had secured a settlement. Lindsay even offered to send screenshots. My hands were steady when I answered. Send everything. It took 2 minutes for the messages to start pouring in. Photos of conversations. Screenshots of plans. Jessica bragging about how dumb I was, how easy it would be to play the victim, how she had already started documenting emotional neglect so it would look like I was the one who abandoned the marriage. She had been building a case against me while crawling into other men's beds. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was too small, too simple for what I felt reading those texts. I was disgusted. Not just with her. With myself. For ever believing a word that came out of her mouth. For loving her so blindly I missed the monster right in front of me. I thanked Lindsay. Told her to stay safe and cut ties with the whole mess. She agreed and hung up quickly like she couldn't bear to be connected to the wreckage any longer. I sat there for a long time, staring at the cracked ceiling of the motel room, thinking about the woman crying in my living room hours ago, swearing she just made a mistake. Begging for another chance. She didn't want another chance with me. She wanted more time to finish gutting me. And I almost let her. But not anymore. The next morning I checked out before sunrise. I stopped for coffee at a gas station, black and scalding, exactly how I needed it. Then I drove straight to the house. Jessica's car was gone. Good. I didn't want to see her. Not yet. I had other things to do first. I let myself in with the spare key hidden behind the gutter pipe. Walked through the house room by room, methodically, like a man inspecting a crime scene. And then I started gathering my evidence. Every text Lindsay sent me, printed and neatly labeled. Every lie Jessica ever told me, listed and documented. Every receipt, every suspicious work trip, every tiny betrayal she thought was invisible, laid out plain. Because I wasn't just kicking her out anymore. I was going to make sure when Jessica fell, she fell hard. No safety nets. No soft landings. And this time, there would be no coming back. It took 2 days to set the trap. 2 days of precise, clinical movements. I wasn't fueled by rage anymore. Rage is messy. Rage makes you stupid. I was fueled by something colder, sharper, the need to take back control. The first thing I did was visit a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. A divorce attorney who specialized in high-conflict cases. The kind of attorney people hired when they didn't just want to leave, they wanted to win. I laid it all out for him. The affair. The financial manipulation. The screenshots Lindsay sent me. He listened carefully, never interrupting, his pen gliding across the legal pad in quick, decisive strokes. When I was finished, he looked up at me and smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. You're going to be fine, he said. She, on the other hand, is going to be very, very uncomfortable. He gave me a list of steps to take. Things I needed to secure. Documents. Financial records. Proof of everything Jessica had hidden or lied about. Evidence of her infidelity. Evidence of her attempts to set me up as the villain. Because the truth is, courts don't care about broken hearts. They care about broken contracts. Jessica had broken every single one. I spent the rest of the day following his instructions to the letter. Collecting. Copying. Storing everything safely where she couldn't touch it. And when I was done, I set the second part of the plan into motion. I knew Jessica. I knew her patterns. She was like a moth to flame when she thought she could manipulate a situation to her favor. I needed her to feel like she still had power over me. That I was broken enough, stupid enough, hopeful enough to still chase her. So I texted her. Can we talk? I'm sorry about everything. I miss you. I didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, she replied. I miss you too. Can we meet at the house tonight? Perfect. I spent the afternoon setting the scene. Cleaning the living room. Making it look like I had been wallowing there, waiting for her return. I left the bracelet, the one she bought for Brandon, sitting on the coffee table, just visible enough to sting. And then I waited. The sun set. The clock ticked. I didn't move. At 8:17 p.m., the door opened. Jessica stepped inside wearing the same mask she always wore when she wanted something. Soft smile, glassy eyes, body language so sweet it could rot your teeth. Hey, she said, voice trembling just the right amount. She dropped her purse and walked toward me, hesitating just enough to seem vulnerable. I stood up, let her approach, let her think the game was still hers. When she was close enough to touch me, I took a step back and placed a single envelope on the coffee table between us. She froze, smile flickering like a bad light bulb. What's this? She asked, voice wary now. Open it, I said. She hesitated, then snatched it up and tore it open. Inside was a copy of the divorce papers, and every single piece of evidence, screenshots, receipts, printouts, neatly organized and paperclipped to each section. A full map of her betrayal, laid out like an autopsy report. I watched the color drain from her face as she flipped through them, her hands starting to shake. You're serious, she whispered. Dead serious, I said. She opened her mouth, probably to unleash whatever desperate, venomous excuse she had lined up, but I raised my hand and cut her off. Save it, I said coldly. Save the tears. Save the fake apologies. Save the speeches about how we can work through this. You made your choice. Now live with it. She dropped the papers like they burned her. You can't do this to me, she hissed. You have no idea what you're throwing away. You'll regret this. I laughed. A real laugh this time. A clean, sharp sound that felt like peeling off old, rotted skin. Regret? Jessica, the only thing I regret is not seeing what you were a long time ago. She lunged forward then, her face twisted with fury, hands clawing at the papers like she could somehow erase them if she just ripped them up fast enough. But I didn't move. I just watched. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't the one scrambling, second-guessing, begging. She was, and it was glorious. Jessica stood there panting, hair wild around her face, her hands still twisted in the crumpled papers like she could squeeze a different outcome out of them if she just gripped tight enough. For a second, I almost pitied her. Almost. Then she switched gears just like I knew she would. Her face softened. Her eyes shimmered with forced tears. She dropped the papers dramatically to the floor and crossed the room toward me with slow, careful steps. Ryan, she breathed, voice low, seductive, manipulative in the way it had always been when words weren't working. We don't have to do this. We can fix it. You and me. We were good together. You know we were. She reached out, fingers brushing my arm. A calculated, practiced touch. The same move she had probably used on every guy she had ever needed something from. I let her fingers linger for a second, just long enough for her to think she had a chance. Then I stepped back. The rejection hit her like a slap. The mask cracked for a second, her mouth twitching in something between rage and disbelief. You're wasting your time, I said evenly. You played yourself out of this marriage the minute you decided you were smarter than me. She blinked rapidly, desperation seeping through the cracks now. You can't just throw away everything we built, she burst out. You think some cheap lawyer and a few texts are going to destroy me? You think you'll walk away clean? I'll tell everyone you were abusive. I'll tell them you cheated first. You're not the victim here. Ryan, you're pathetic. I smiled at her, slow and cruel. I know, I said quietly, cutting her rant off midstream. That's why I recorded this conversation. Her mouth snapped shut. She looked around wildly, like she could see the microphones, the evidence closing in on her. But there was nothing, just the brutal, simple truth. My phone sat openly on the side table, screen facing up, recording since the moment she stepped inside. She knew it. She knew it. I let the silence stretch between us until it became suffocating. You really think? I said, stepping toward her now, voice dropping to something colder than I'd ever used before. That I would confront you without backup? Without proof? After everything? She opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time, Jessica, the master manipulator, was utterly speechless. I picked up the papers from the floor, stacked them neatly, and slid them back into the envelope. I'll be filing these tomorrow, I said. You'll be served officially after that. Do not come back here. Do not contact me. If you do, the next call I make will be to the police. She shook her head, still trying to find some leverage, some way to climb out of the grave she had dug for herself. You'll regret this, she whispered hoarsely. You'll miss me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized for the first time how small she was. How hollow. I already don't, I said. And then I walked out of my own house, leaving her standing there, surrounded by the wreckage of her lies. Outside, the air was cool and sharp, like the world itself was washing her stench off me. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. Because I knew Jessica was finally seeing the thing she feared the most. A man who saw her for exactly what she was and didn't care anymore. And she would have to live with that a hell of a lot longer than she ever lived with me. I didn't go home for a week. Not because I was scared of Jessica. Because I wanted her to sit in that empty house, surrounded by her own failure, stewing in the silence she created. I stayed with my friend Mark during that time. The same Mark who had quietly hinted over beers months ago that something felt off about Jessica but never pushed because I had brushed it off. He didn't ask questions now. Just handed me a beer, gave me the spare bedroom key, and let me be. Every morning I got a new text from Jessica. Long ones. Short ones. Pictures of her crying. Voicemails sobbing my name. Then the tone changed like clockwork to anger. Accusations. Threats. Begging disguised as ultimatums. I didn't answer a single one. By the end of the week, the texts turned quiet. Only a single message came in that Friday morning. Please just meet me. One last time. I'll explain everything. You deserve that. I almost ignored it. Almost. But then I thought no. She needed to see it. She needed to see that there was nothing left for her to twist. No openings. No cracks. No weak spots to crawl through. So I agreed. We met at a neutral place. A public park busy enough that she couldn't pull one of her hysterical scenes without an audience. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench under a tree, clutching her phone like a lifeline. She stood up the second she saw me, smoothing down her clothes, plastering that wide-eyed, broken expression across her face, the one she thought would still work on me. It didn't. Ryan, she said softly, stepping forward like we were lovers separated by some tragic misunderstanding. Thank you for coming. I just wanted to explain. Really explain. I stayed silent. Waiting. She took it as encouragement and launched into a performance that was almost impressive in its shamelessness. How she got lost. How none of it meant anything. How deep down she was terrified of losing me and sabotaged herself. How she had always loved me even when she messed up. I watched her, wondering if she even believed her own words at this point or if lying had just become her native language. When she finally ran out of breath, she looked at me, eyes shining with hope. I pulled a small envelope from my jacket and handed it to her. She blinked in confusion and opened it. Inside was a printed screenshot of her own text, the one she had sent Brandon just 2 weeks before. Don't worry, he's clueless. A little more time and I'll have everything. Jessica stared at it, the color draining from her face. This, I said, voice quiet but sharp, is everything you are. In one sentence. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Swallowed hard. For once, she didn't have a speech ready. I leaned in slightly, keeping my voice low so she had to strain to hear it over the chatter of the park around us. You think you're complicated, I said. You think you're a tragic, misunderstood genius of heartbreak. But you're not. You're simple. You want what you can't have, and when you get it, you destroy it. Over and over again. Jessica's eyes filled with tears again. Real or fake, it didn't matter. I took a step back. This is the last conversation we will ever have, I said. Delete my number. Forget my name. You're a ghost to me now. She reached for me instinctively, like a drowning person grabbing at anything to stay afloat. I stepped further back. No, I said simply. You don't get to touch me anymore. I turned and walked away, my boots crunching across the gravel, her soft, broken sobs fading behind me until they were just another background noise, like the wind through the trees or the traffic in the distance. For the first time in a long time, I felt weightless. Free. Jessica could have the empty house. She could have the tangled lies. She could have her endless cycle of chasing and ruining. None of it touched me anymore. She had set the fire. And now she could burn alone. I didn't hear from Jessica after the park. Not a text. Not a call. Not a whisper through mutual friends. It was over. Not with an explosion, but with a quiet, pathetic whimper. The court date came fast. My lawyer was surgical, precise, brutal without ever raising his voice. He presented the evidence like an artist unveiling a masterpiece. Each lie, each betrayal, each disgusting little secret she thought would stay hidden, laid bare under cold fluorescent courtroom lights. Jessica sat there, shrinking smaller with every new document, every photo, every message blown up onto the courtroom screens. She tried to fight at first, tried to play the tearful, heartbroken wife wronged by the cold, distant husband. But the judge wasn't an idiot, and neither were the lawyers. It took less than an hour for the truth to carve through every illusion she had spent years building. The settlement was brutal. I kept the house. I kept my business assets. She walked away with almost nothing but her car, her clothes, and a legal bill she couldn't afford to pay. And still, somehow, she thought she could win. 2 days after the ruling, I got an email. From Jessica. Subject line, "Please read this." I almost deleted it without opening it. But curiosity won out. Inside was a letter. It was long, rambling, desperate. She apologized in circles, blaming childhood trauma, blaming her mother, blaming me, blaming the pressure of our perfect life. She begged for forgiveness. Not to reconcile, even she wasn't that delusional anymore, but for absolution. She wanted me to tell her it was okay. That she wasn't the villain in her own story. That somewhere deep down, she was still a good person who just made a few bad choices. I closed the email without replying. She didn't deserve peace. Not from me. Instead, I did something she didn't expect. I threw a party. A housewarming party, even though I never left the house. I invited every friend we used to share. Every acquaintance who used to fawn over our perfect marriage. Every person she ever tried to impress. They came. They drank. They laughed. And when they asked where Jessica was, I smiled and said casually, "We're divorced." Turns out she had a lot of boyfriends I didn't know about. I didn't have to go into details. The truth had a way of traveling fast without my help. By the end of the night, everyone knew. Jessica's empire of appearances crumbled faster than her marriage ever did. And me? I stood on the back deck, beer in hand, watching the sunset over my backyard, feeling lighter than I had in years. No bitterness, no regret, just relief. I didn't just survive Jessica. I outlived her. Not in the literal sense. She was still out there somewhere, spiraling, searching for a new fool to believe her lies. But in the ways that mattered, in the places that count, she was already a ghost. I had my life back. And she had nothing but the wreckage she built with her own hands. It could have ended there. It should have ended there. But Jessica, true to her nature, didn't know when to quit. About a month after the divorce was finalized, I got a knock on my door one Saturday morning. I wasn't expecting anyone. Still a little cautious, I checked the peephole. There she was, standing on my porch like a bad memory you can't scrub out no matter how hard you try. She looked rough. Dark circles under her eyes, makeup smeared, hair tangled like she had gotten into a fight with the wind and lost. I considered just walking away, pretending I wasn't home. But something in me wanted to see it. Wanted to see what the collapse of a liar looked like up close. So I opened the door. We stared at each other for a long moment. She fidgeted, shifting her weight from foot to foot like a schoolgirl caught sneaking out of class. "Ryan," she said finally, voice small. I didn't know where else to go. I said nothing. She took a shaky breath. I'm homeless." The words hung there, ridiculous and raw. She explained, tumbling over herself in a rush. After our divorce, she had moved in with Brandon. Surprise. But that crumbled fast when it turned out he didn't want a full-time project. Just a fling. Without money, without backup plans, without anyone left who cared enough to pick up the pieces. She had burned through the last of her goodwill. And now she was standing on my doorstep, hoping for a second miracle. I let her finish. Let her lay it all out. Her voice cracking more and more until it was barely above a whisper. When she was done, she looked at me with those wide, broken eyes she had used 1,000 times before. "I just need a place to stay for a little while," she said. Just until I get back on my feet." It wasn't even anger I felt in that moment. It was pity. The cold, detached kind you feel when you see something pathetic, like a wasp drowning in soda. You know it'll die soon, and you feel a little sorry, but not enough to stick your hand in and save it. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You thought," I said slowly, savoring every word, "that after everything, after the cheating, after the lies, after trying to bleed me dry, you could come back here?" She opened her mouth, desperate. "I've changed," she whispered. "I swear." I shook my head, a small, almost sad smile pulling at the corner of my mouth. "No," I said. "You haven't. You're exactly the same. The only thing that's different is now everyone else sees it too." I straightened up, ready to end this. "You made your bed, Jessica. Go lie in it." Her face twisted, rage, shame, disbelief warring across her features, but I didn't flinch. I closed the door in her face without another word. And this time, when the latch clicked, it wasn't just the end of a conversation. It was the end of her. Through the peephole, I watched her stand there for a moment longer, waiting for the world to save her the way it always had. But no one came. Finally, she turned and walked away, disappearing down the street like a shadow at sunrise. And me? I locked the door, turned off my phone, and went back to living the life she tried and failed to ruin. Life after Jessica wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't some perfect montage of laughter, freedom, and effortless healing. It was quieter than that. Simpler. Better. The days stretched out one after another, and somewhere between morning coffees I didn't have to share and evenings where the silence was actually peaceful, I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology that would never come. I wasn't chasing closure from someone who didn't even know what real closure meant. I was just living. I fixed up the house, painted over old memories, rearranged the furniture, changed everything Jessica had ever touched, every little design she had once insisted on like it mattered. Piece by piece I reclaimed my home. Piece by piece I reclaimed myself. Friends drifted back in. New ones showed up. Opportunities one had put on hold because she needed me home more suddenly blossomed like they had just been waiting for the right time. I wasn't the man who had once bent himself into knots to make her happy. I was something stronger now. Something she couldn't touch even if she tried. Sometimes, late at night, when the world was still and the only sound was the ticking of the kitchen clock, I thought about her. I wondered where she was, what new lies she was telling, what poor fool was buying into her act now. But the thought never stayed long. Because Jessica didn't live in my world anymore. She was a scar. Not a wound. A lesson. Not a loss. And if there's one thing I would tell anyone standing where I once stood broken, blindsided, drowning in betrayal, it's this. You don't have to save people who are determined to drown. You don't have to stay loyal to someone who was building an escape route behind your back. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Walk away. No matter how much it hurts. Walk away. Because somewhere out there, on the other side of the pain, is a version of yourself who knows better. Who chooses better. Who is better. And that version of you? That person is worth fighting for. Jessica wasn't my ending. She was my beginning.